how's everybody doing? Welcome. Just me and the ladies hanging out, just the way I like it. Welcome back to the Lady Leadership Series. And today we're going to be talking about maternity leave and systemization. So everybody here except for the GSD Queen has kids. So we have a very esteemed panel here with us. Let me introduce everybody really quick before I bow out. We have Dr. Summer Casmel. Everybody knows Dr. Summer. She is a DSI Black Belt and has been for 3 years. She's the founder and owner of Castle Peak Dental and Avon Dental, the culmination of a 4-office merger in the mountains of Colorado. Dr. Ellie Dowden, woohoo, Marquette. Dr. Ellie lives in West Bend, Wisconsin with her husband and 1-year-old daughter, Scarlett. She graduated from Marquette in 2014 and now owns her own practice, Cornerstone Dental, for about 2.5 years now. In her free time, she enjoys spending time with her family, reading and working out on the Peloton. Who's your favorite instructor?
Oh, I go back and forth between Robin and Allie. They're both so good.
Yeah, if I want to get my ass kicked, I go Allie Love.
Oh yeah.
She always kicks my butt. Yes, but she's my fave. She's my fave. All right. Oh, next up we have Dr. Caroline Labritz. Is that correct? Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Labritz, but I go by Carrie too. I answered everything.
All right, that's awesome. I feel like I know you. You're such a good contributor in DSN, so thank you for being such a great contributor.
No problem.
But Carrie graduated from West Virginia University School of Dentistry in 2004 with a doctorate of dental surgery. She is known. She's now the owner of Cereso Dental, which has 2 locations in West Virginia. Dr. Labritz is married with 2 boys. She enjoys baking and cooking in her free time, and she's active in fitness and nutrition as well. You are a legacy, correct, Carrie? Your dad is also a dentist?
My dad is a dentist. My great uncle's a dentist. My brother's a dentist. Working on my kids.
Very nice, very nice. I think it started and ended with this guy right here. My kids have no interest at all.
Yeah.
Yep. So awesome. This is a great topic. Thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your busy days to participate in this and educate our audience. It's going to be extremely well received, I'm sure. And I'm going to bow out now and watch from afar. So thank you guys so much. Good to see everybody's beautiful faces, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Awesome. Okay, so, well, first off, I want to make sure that the audience knows, just as I was getting more information. One, I do want to say that I feel like, Ellie, your little bio kind of intro didn't quite do justice. That one really cool thing that I don't know if people would know about you because you would never say it, is that you did your maternity leave so well, like it was so well orchestrated that you actually, I believe, technically grew during that time. Like your practice actually became more profitable during it. So I do want to say, like, when he said esteemed panel, like Ellie is like a black belt doctor as well, and like runs her numbers exceptionally well and actually grew her practice during that time. So I was like, I have to just say, so.
It did. It ended up working out really, really well.
Yeah, exceptionally well. So you have some great things. And then the other really interesting part of this is, Carrie, you reminded me that you were an associate when you had your kiddos. So you've got this lovely perspective of being able to bring in what worked really well from your owner doc and what you did as an associate during that time to prep yourself. And I myself had 2 maternity leaves, and I currently have a doctor who's going on a maternity leave. So I think we're all surrounded by and have our own perspectives. And at ASH, I think you've seen enough of us go through maternity leaves and stress out about all the things that can go wrong during maternity leaves. So lots of different perspectives. But to start out, I want to say, I'm going to start with you, Ellie, so you took your maternity leave a year ago. How long did you end up taking off time-wise?
So I actually ended up taking about 14 weeks off. It ended up that I had originally wanted to do 12, but I kind of, in combination with maternity leave, we also did a full office renovation too. So forgot to add that part in as well.
Wow.
Yeah. But It ended up actually going really well. When I initially found out that I was pregnant, I had owned the practice about a year at that point. And so I sat down, and as you know, with any new practice, it's like, especially in acquisition, you're dealing with so much stress with staff turnover and trying to kind of get your own systems in place and meet the patients. And there's just a lot going on that when I found out I was pregnant, I was obviously really excited, but then I sat down and just was like thinking like, okay, where do I see this going and what do I want for myself once we have this baby? And where I saw it going was I have 3 options here. Option 1 is I can just basically take 2 to 4 weeks off, just kind of get by, not really have any doctor coverage. Option 2 was that I could look for a temp, probably get like maybe 6 to 8 weeks off. And then the third option was to look for an associate. And with that option, I thought I could probably do the full 12 weeks, which is ultimately what I had wanted to do. And so when I saw those options in front of me, it was so clear what I wanted, but it was just a matter of trying to make it happen, which I think was the biggest thing, was just kind of setting my mind to the fact that this is what I wanted. The biggest first step was obviously deciding to put that job posting out for an associate. And I just did it right away because I'm like, as scary as this seems and as not ready as what I felt, I just knew that this is what had to be done. And so I just did it and kind of got the ball rolling from there.
How far along were you? Like, at what point in your pregnancy did you just figure that out and put that ad out?
Like right away. Basically,
Okay.
I found out in January. And so I kind of figured with where the practice was at, it wasn't busy enough at that point to support 2 doctors. So my thought was that I was going to look at the dental schools because I thought if I could get a new grad in, it would take a little bit of time to kind of get them up to speed. And I thought the transition would work out really well, being when they would be done with school, probably in like June. I was due in September, that I thought it could be a really good transition. And so I really only posted the job at the schools. And I know most new grads are looking kind of in February, March-ish. So the timing actually worked out really well that way.
Awesome. I have way more questions on that one. But Carrie, so you were an associate at that time. How did you personally prep for it? And how did your owner or owners, depending on, I don't know, if there was multiple different times with the, owners, how did they handle it that you feel was helpful or not helpful?
So I was working for corporate at the time. I spent 5 years in corporate office, and that's where I had my babies. The biggest thing I think that I would say to anybody, for me, I decided to take, it's hard to remember. My kids are 11 and 13. I think I was doing a straight 6 weeks off and then coming back part-time for another couple weeks after that. However, I had 2 things happen to me with both of my pregnancies. With my first pregnancy, I actually ended up with 14 weeks off. I was 6 weeks off before I had the baby because I got carpal tunnel so bad my hands went numb.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really hard because, it's hard to plan for that. With the second pregnancy, I took off and ended up having some major complications after it and was off for 16 weeks.
Okay.
So I was supposed to go back, and then I ended up having to take like multiple more weeks off. So I'm a really good person to say, even if you plan for this, you never know what's going to happen. And so what the practice did, I was the only doctor in the practice, pretty much running the practice. So I was a single doctor in that practice. They had brought in another associate with some of their other practices, and they just kind of flipped that associate into the practice. But it ended up being a disaster because I ended up being off. The first pregnancy was easier because I was like, hey, we kind of knew it was coming, and I took off, and then I had the baby, and then we knew when I was coming back. The second one was a real surprise because I was supposed to go back 1 week later, and then I ended up having to take 8 more weeks off. And So it was interesting.
Mm.
But I think that the takeaway from that is that I don't know, be prepared. Be prepared for anything, because as easy as you think it can potentially be, you never know what can happen.
Yeah. Be prepared to be unprepared. Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's funny, because I have a doc who's going out, and I'm thinking to myself, like, if she was my only associate doc, you know, she's leaving here in about 2 weeks, we hope. She too is starting to experience a little of that carpal tunnel, so we're watching that closely. But what's amazing is, yes, like, you're right. I mean, it could be something unexpected, and the workload that we have her coming back to, that's such a beautiful point that even I was like, oh gosh, that's a really good point. You can't plan everything, I guess. So yeah, be willing to step in wherever, however, and life will give you what life's going to give you. So what do you think, Ellie, for you, worked with your plan of, you know, posting the associateship? What went really well for you during that time? And did you spend a lot of time onboarding before?
So it actually worked out pretty smooth. I think I had probably only about 3 to 4 good candidates. I had done some in-person interviews, and I think it was probably by I would say probably February or March that I kind of had it narrowed in on who I thought would be a really good fit. And I had him come into the office and meet the team, and everyone was really supportive and liked him. And so I believe I probably had the offer to him by about that point, and he had accepted. But he wasn't planning on starting until June. And so in the meantime, what I did was made sure that I had all like the calibration documents finished. So I just went through and I wrote down everything that I do in terms of diagnosing. I had example pictures just to kind of make sure that both of us were on the same page. I think it's super important that, especially for patients, that they see consistency in between the doctors. So I finished that document. I did write down scripting for all different types of appointments. And so I just kind of went through, for example, a new patient exam, exactly what I do step by step, and wrote that down for him, as well as different verbiage recommendations. I know coming out of school, one thing that I really noticed once he started is that coming out of school, you are so used to saying the weirdest things, like such dental jargon that you look at the patients and they're just like, what are you even talking about? So we definitely had to work on that. But he was able to prepare ahead of time with a lot of that material, so that I felt like when he actually did start in June, it was a pretty seamless start. Obviously, with any new grad or new employee, I'm sure it takes time for them to get up to speed, but I do think that helped a lot.
Absolutely. Carrie, what do you see as systems that, now that you have other associates as well, what systems do you see? And maybe you don't have any females, but
I can't hear you.
Can you hear
again?
me?
I didn't hear you. Yeah.
Okay. I was saying, what systems do you have for your associate docs now that you find indispensable when you're bringing in, or excuse me, when, if people have to leave for maternity leave or whatever leaves, what systems do you find indispensable that you rely on heavily at this point?
You mean systems for the doctors?
Yes.
That's hard. That's a hard one, Summer, because none of us are having babies. And so I guess it was really interesting to hear Ellie talk about that. So I thought, man, I'm not in that mindset, because I wasn't in that mindset whenever I was having babies. But as far as calibration of doctors, we spend a lot of time. I spend more time probably calibrating my team than talking to my doctors about the calibration, because I feel like it's like osmosis after a while. If I can get my team saying the same things over and over and over again, the doctors kind of start falling in step with it. And so I look at it and probably take it a little bit differently, but we all sit and talk all the time too. We were doing monthly meetings, and then COVID happened, and I think next month we're going to start actually last month we had our first doctor's monthly meeting where we sat down and kind of go through everything. How are you handling this? How are you handling that? I have a doctor's manual that has, I hate to call them policies, but basically policies, like here's what you do with this, here's what you do with this, here's what you do with this. Probably not quite the detail that Ellie has, but I spend a lot more time on the team calibration, if that makes sense.
Which, by the way, brings up a really good point. So when I had my maternity leaves, I went the middle route, Ellie, that you were talking about with 1, 2, or 3. So I went the temp doc route, and that was relatively disastrous. I definitely did not see growth. So I will present the wrongest way of doing it, which was I found a temp doc, like from, a locum tenens type, Barton and Associates, or what, it wasn't them, but I can't remember who it was. And I didn't interview the gentleman well. I think I met him once, and I had kind of like, here's probably your start date. I told the team kind of what I thought they needed to know, and he started. Well, it was about that good, y'all. Like,
I'm laughing because see, I didn't go through this, and so it's really interesting to hear that aspect of it.
Yeah, so this is, I want to contrast with Ellie and mine here.
Yeah.
And so so that was the way I did it. And I will tell you, I had a small team at that time. And so luckily they were some good ones, but it was extremely hard on my team. My patients, I had put a little bit of information out for them to know. And I ended up taking off with one kiddo, I believe 7 weeks. Like Ellie, it was exactly like you said, like 7 weeks. And I think the other one was down to like 6. And the one thing that I would say is I absolutely love, Ellie, how you kind of map that out. Not to say that you have to have an associate. I think, some people aren't in a position that they could put that ad out and truly be able to get that associate in. And I understand that. But I think being a little more methodical about what option's going to work. And one thing I can say is I did not know this back then, that you don't have to just like go on the classifieds of your, local dental societies to find these locum docs. There's actually companies like Barton and Associates and other people that allow you to actually interview, get production numbers, talk to other people that used them. There's way smarter ways of doing it. So I only highlight the worst way. And then with Ellie being such a success story, the in-between is if there's somebody out there that's seriously currently in this position, there are really great locum tenens that you can interview just like you would an associate and bring them in and have more ample time to actually onboard them with those documents. I too, Ellie, obviously have those associate onboarding documents that you can use for temp docs, but spending a little more time on the front end planning it. As far as insurance, one thing to know is locum tenens actually have kind of their own insurance, coding that you can let insurance companies know ahead of time. And that's something that I wish I probably would have done as well, is let the insurance companies know that I'll have somebody in office beforehand. Ash, I don't know if you have anything that you saw all of us go through that you can say as far as great ways and wrong ways. And I guess there was no wrong way. That was just maybe not.
It's good to share because, like I said, to know, like to kind of see what that middle route looks like. Like obviously that can be an awesome option for people too. Like you said, it just depends, what you're looking for in your practice at that point in your life.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's just important to remember, I think like Ellie was mentioning, you had asked her, when in this process did you decide to place that ad for an associate? And Ellie, you had mentioned, it as scary as it was. And I think that's kind of the key. Some people can think it's really scary just to place an ad. And I feel this way about any dental position, like just have the ad out there. Like, just like you can turn people down. You don't have to hire someone just because you have an ad out there, but see what's out there. It's kind of like fishing, you can throw the fish back if you don't want it.
Right.
So I think that's really important to remember. It's not, you're not committing to anything, but it's at least start seeing what's out there, at least start feeling it out. If that's the route that you're choosing to go, is don't be intimidated by just placing the ad. I think that's something that's really important to remember.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I mean, when it comes to planning that maternity leave and bringing somebody in, some of the things that, and I'm going to ask you guys' thought process too, the things that maybe I wish I would have known back then was prep sooner. Like you said, don't be afraid to think of all the what ifs, and try to plan as best as possible. Figure out which of those ways works the best for you. I wish I would have credentialed smarter with the insurance companies who was going to be in there, just because it makes collections real hard when you haven't done that on the forefront. The other thing that I wish I would have done that, Ellie, I have a sneaky suspicion you did with this, is come up with your bare bone minimum, recognizing monthly what you need. And then I wish I would have said to myself that, where's my overhead currently? And if I bring this person in and I'm not producing with my hands, I wish I would have probably figured out some sort of formula of, if I want to maintain it at 60% and I'm paying this doc 28 to 30%, I want to ensure that I'm not losing money having that person.
That was going to be my next point, is that one really big thing too, is that especially because you have all this time to prepare, is that to like figure out those numbers and know both, not only just with your business, but also personally too. So if you know you want to take 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever that is, know your numbers and what your office would need. Like, say worst case scenario, something goes terrible and no one is producing, or you need to be able to cover your overhead. To have that money saved up and to know that you already have that covered was such a relief, and just kind of took a big weight off my shoulders, both for the office and then same thing personally. Know your personal expenses so that way you have that money saved up and it's just one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the things that I wish maybe I would have figured out ahead of time, so I just didn't stress and felt like I needed to get back so quickly. Carrie, obviously you were on the other side of it. What do you wish you could have told yourself, or is there anything now as an owner that because you were in that position, you wish you would have known?
So it's interesting when you talk about like being in preparation for what's happening. My husband's a financial advisor, so we were like, we knew every single thing. And to kind of put it into perspective, we were prepared for 3 months of maternity leave, and I ended up with 4 months of maternity leave. And that's when the stock market crashed in 2009. So it was like when we talk about a big blow up in worst case scenario, when I thought I was taking 6 weeks and I ended up with 16, and then the black swan happened. So I think, like, speaking of being massively prepared, I don't think you could ever be too prepared. However, I do think it's really important having an 11 and a 13-year-old, and my 13-year-old is bigger than me now. I will tell you, I will never, ever, ever look back and miss that time that I had off either. And so as a woman, as a business owner, and as somebody who is just always on top of my patients and wants to be in control of it, I don't know, if I could give advice to anybody who's young and in that position and being super stressed about it, you're never going to get that time back. And so if you have the opportunity to do it, take it, don't stress about it. It'll all work out in the end.
Mm-hmm.
With preparation.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with none.
Yeah.
I don't advocate it. It just made it really well. And you're right. Like, I wish I could go back and have enjoyed actually probably more time. And that's what preparation probably would have done. But nonetheless, like, will it work out? It will. But I think with the preparation, like Ellie said, she didn't stress over it where I did. I stressed all the time. Mm-hmm. And some of the things, that I have heard from other clients, and Ashley, you might be able to chime in on this, is things that they wish they would have done better during maternity leaves is better prepared their team, giving them, I love, Carrie, that you said that, like really ensuring that their teams were prepared verbiage wise, how to edify this doctor, knowing who this doctor was, being able to talk to patients and other team members such that they are really supporting that doctor, helping to sometimes cattle guard and guardrail them when maybe they're going off culture a little bit potentially. I know that there's other women who have said they wish they would have spent more time there, which, Carrie, I love that. Like you said, that sometimes can be enough, that if you've got this great culture of a team, they can help. And then, you know, one comment made was, and you guys can chime in here too, that doctors sometimes say that they lose touch with their teams. You know, they kind of just go off the grid, and they wish that maybe they're not going to be come back into the office all the time and be present, but maintaining, whether it's Zoom video calls once in a while, check-ins on the phone. Oh, sorry, y'all. Was that could you hear that?
I can hear you.
It just sounded a little fuzzy. You're good.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay, we have communication within our offices, sorry. But made some funny noises. But they wish, where was I? Was it good? What was I saying when that happened?
That's what happens when you have babies.
I don't remember what I was saying. I think just prepping the team better, and keeping communication with the team during that time, and like ensuring that there's still accountability. And I don't know, Ellie, if that's going to be you, Ash, you know, but how do you maintain communication and accountability without feeling like, you know, you need to be present and in that place? Tell me how that looked for you guys. Well, for you, Ellie and Ash, what you've seen.
So what I did, and what I think was really helpful, is that I promoted one of my staff members to office manager. When I first went out, I was pregnant. I did not have an office manager, and honestly, I was doing everything. I was doing way too much. So one of the key things that I did was I promoted her, and then I slowly started delegating tasks to her, which I think ultimately really helped, because, you know, the staff then started switching over to, instead of coming to me all the time, they started to go to her instead, which I think was huge, because then by the time that I, you know, had gone on maternity leave, then everyone was pretty much used to going to her. So then she kind of became my point of contact, and the staff was great with it at that point. We do our weekly meetings, and so I would check in during those meetings, and then I think 6 weeks in, I started coming to the office for those weekly meetings, and I think that was really good for the staff too, just to know that I was still there, I was still checking in, you know, and things were still running smoothly because of that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Did you give it?
Would communicate it to me, and so they knew that they had a way to reach out to me if they needed to.
Mm-hmm. Did you give any specific accountability or leadership to the other doctor?
Yes, you know, he probably not as much as I could have or should have, but because he was a new grad, it was a little hard, because he was just trying to kind of figure out dentistry and kind of figure out that part of things, that I didn't really want to overwhelm him, which I think is why the office manager came in so key, because she could kind of take some of that off of him. But, you know, clinically, yes, he kind of was their go-to.
Sure. Ashley, Carrie?
I think that you kind of just took the words right out of my mouth. Like, it's important to have that person, like office manager, and that's like almost as important as that associate who's replacing you. And that's someone who can handle these day-to-day tasks and making sure that you aren't inundated by everyone trying to contact you while you're trying to, you know, enjoy your time with your newborn and heal and all that stuff. And so it's important to have someone that you're molding as you reach that point, who they're used to. So having a strong office manager, if you don't have an office manager, that's definitely a position that you need to fill along with that associate position. And yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say. So spot on, Ellie. It's like you went through it before.
A little different perspective here, because I haven't had an office manager since COVID, and I have like 19 employees, and believe it or not, it's been probably one of the biggest blessings of my practice. And that's totally off topic and we can really go off on a tangent there. I'm happy to talk about that any other time. But what actually really worked for me, I always think of this, like you guys you're talking about maternity leave, but I think it's really relevant for even taking a vacation, right? Like if you want to take, what if you want to take 2 weeks off or 4 weeks off or things like that? I think it's still relevant. So as far as, one person being in charge, I know that, like I stated earlier, I try to spend a lot of time with all of my team members and massive calibration and letting everybody, instead of letting everybody feel empowered in their position. So they actually, they start policing themselves after a while. And I notice that the team starts policing themselves instead of having somebody oversee them. So I know it's completely different, but it is really different, but it's surprisingly.
I think it's kind of the same though, because it goes back to the systems, right? Like you want to make sure that like in your area, like I'm sure you have some regimented badass systems, bad bum systems, as Dr. Katzma would say, that really, like, because people want to do their jobs and they want to do it well. So if the systems are in place and they know what they're supposed to be doing, like you said, they'll police themselves. So if you can have some super strong systems and they're in it to win it, then I think I can see how that could work for sure.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say too, is, what's funny is I think that's the beauty of this right here, is what I was thinking is, like, in Ellie's size and practice, that makes perfect sense, right? She has this lovely little cohesive team that can look to this person who's not going to use that power as a wielding sword of, whatever. She's going to use it for good and really make sure that, Ellie has already this beautiful team, that it makes sense. Whereas Carrie, like you said, as you start to get bigger, sometimes having that one person, it's not actually very sustainable, or can even create silos amongst the practice. And so, I kind of am somewhere in between with that for systemization, where I have kind of department leads, which they had to prove more so that they were just truly a leader, that it's not compensated necessarily monetarily. They just don't know how not to lead, because it comes with extra work and time. And then I have a practice director that oversees kind of the greater good, but like you said, they are so self policing, I guess, or just such accountable people that it doesn't, I guess that's part of the whole hiring, which is a whole nother topic too, of hiring well, kind of knowing the culture of your practice. Because one thing I was thinking as we kind of go back to the maternity leave, because right now there might be people listening who either aren't there yet, are there right now, or think that maybe they could be. So knowing that they're sitting in this practice, they have, one hygienist, one assistant, Ellie, they're more in your shoes, where they just took over something a year ago, because, and now they're finding themselves in that situation. It's like, gosh, what do you do there? And it may be a combination of really spending all that time in the team, but also ensuring for your own sake that you've got that point person, so that the whole team's not, texting you and calling you on the, at all times. So I think what people who are listening might take away from this is that sense of, you're going to have to know thy team. And if you don't have people on your team that you can trust with this, that's probably more of the red flag of trying to figure out during that time before you leave, what do you need to do to start to create some accountability checklists and systems that can be reproducible even if you're not there, because somebody's going to have to be overseeing that, because it won't potentially be the locum tenens doc or even a new associate. So I don't know if anybody has anything to share, but as I was listening to that, it was like the hybrid too.
That was interesting. And I think if I had something maybe to suggest, if it's not always easy finding an associate, it's not always easy to find a manager, and that can go really wrong if you put the wrong person in that position. So it may not be a bad idea to do leads, or to find somebody and say, hey, like, I need you to be my go-to person. I'm going to give you a bonus it's going to become a maternity bonus during this time. And I'm going to have you be my go-to person. If anybody has a question, they go to you, and it's going to be temporary.
Mhm.
And then doesn't necessarily lock you into that position either. And maybe you can test them out too.
Right. It's a good internship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So great. I think those are all really good points and systems to have in place. What other systems, and maybe Ellie, I'm pointedly asking you, were there other systems that you tended to shore up during that time with team, doctor, patients experience? Is there anything system-wise that you tightened up or recognized the need, and now looking back, you were so thankful you did, and they potentially even stuck with you?
I think probably the most important systems that we implemented, well, I don't know, I guess we did quite a few. I think end of day checklists are super important. Just because if I'm not going to be there, and being able to like make sure that all the stuff is being done, that they have something to go by, and then turn that into the office manager at the end of the night to hold accountable. We did our weekly WIG meetings. I think holding everyone, basically having that time to meet and touch base and making sure that we're all on the same page was really important, especially, with the staff, being that there's a lot of changes happening with me leaving the office, and as a new associate, there's this new office manager. There's just like a lot going on that I think having those frequent check-ins was really good for everyone, just to make sure that everyone stayed on the same page and was comfortable with where we were heading. Let's see, I guess we implemented an ordering system. We made this whole tag system that everything had a tag, because prior to that I was ordering. So I delegated that to, I delegated that to one of my assistants. And so having this system in place, everyone knew, when it was down to a certain amount, they pulled the tag. It just made it very streamlined and easy. Implemented a budget for her and a spreadsheet to follow. So just kind of really made everything very clear, and just to help very clear, and then delegated appropriately. And then I think the biggest thing is then just holding everyone accountable, which is what the office manager really, I think, helped do, and hold everything together that way.
And how did your team, I mean, from my understanding, your team took really well to that, actually.
They did. Well, so when I first purchased the practice, my team now is 100% different from when I purchased it. So yeah.
Right?
So I think, from the very get-go, when I hired them, like, they understood the vision and the goal with the practice, and the goal was to grow and to implement these systems. So they've always been on board with me. I throw new things at them all the time, and they're like, okay, yeah, sure. So I think it's just the type of person that I've hired and have in these roles. They've just been awesome in terms of implementing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. So they weren't offended at having an office manager, I guess is what I'm saying.
No. So she had been, and I think the reason I chose her was because you can kind of just tell, she kind of rose above, and that people would automatically just naturally go to her with certain things. And so that was kind of a big indicator to me that she could be the right person. And it definitely worked out, because when I did promote her to that, there was zero issues. It just naturally seemed to happen and to work well.
Mm-hmm. Which, I think because of, if anybody learned something from listening to you, is because your story is like a really great success story of, being smart about who you had on your team before you left, really looking at expenses, prepping yourself in systems. What happens, I guess, Carrie, Ashley, like, you guys probably know situations where people were thrown into them and things weren't ideal. I was one of them, but, maybe Ashley specifically, have you heard any stories of, what happens when you didn't have the right team and there's exodus in the middle of it?
Ooh.
Do you want to go?
Because I've heard those stories, but
I mean, I think it's just worst case scenario. And yes, I've heard it too. And I think it's just like Carrie said, it's just about being as well prepared as you absolutely can. I mean, like, if you don't have, great systems in place. I worked in like early days of Dr. Costas's practice, and he actually had to leave for a neck surgery. And I mean, it's not maternity leave, but we kind of had a mess in that point too, just because our systems weren't solid. And we had a patient I specifically remember just like raging and insisted on talking to Dr. Costas. And we're like, he has had neck surgery, And so at that point, he actually ended up calling them. He had like a hoarse voice and that type of thing. So I think it's one of those things that you'll get through it. It's stressful, but the more you can plan and have those systems in place, like listen to all of these stories now so that you don't have to deal with it, learn from everybody else's example.
Yeah. Would that have been getting the patients better prepared for it? Or, I mean, truthfully, like, that's a really beautiful point, Ashley. Like sometimes when we just talk, you help me think of like, how would you have better prepared? Because it's not maternity leave, but like Carrie said, it really is all of us. We're all practicing dentists, that could happen to any one of us. So like, how could he have better prepared the patients or whoever for that?
So I think he could have better prepared the patients. And at that time, we didn't have an office manager and nobody knew kind of, it was a transition where like we lost the office manager and he was having neck surgery. Like it was kind of like worst case scenario of everything.
Yeah.
So everyone was like, I don't know what to do, you know, like.
Sure. Yes.
So I think it's just important to have a plan in place. If this happens, you know, like what's the boundary established? Like, are you as doctors willing to potentially lose a patient to keep your peace, or are you know?
That's a really good point. Is telling your team what to do. If I leave, there's a disgruntled patient with the interim doc or the associate doc. Telling your team how to handle disgruntled patients or concerns. Because by the way, I have that. And you're right, I did not. I told you I did pretty well everything not great. And you're right. I had the doctor was talking about suing other doctors in the area to my patients, and my hygienist was texting me at night like, uh-oh, what do we do here? And you're right, had I prepared them better of, you know, hey, pull the doctor aside, we're going to talk about this, but nobody felt comfortable because I never gave any boundaries, like you said. So
right, like what their line is, like what they're allowed to give, so then after that it became like a $500 minimum to please a patient, you know. So that's kind of where a rule came in. It's like you got $500, no carte blanche, just make them happy if it helps, you know. So it's just about creating that system, and we talk about it over and over and over again because it works.
Yep. So that's a good one, is telling your team that if while I'm gone, these things happen, either giving them a budget or make it right money, or, you know, giving them some sort of boundaries of, you know, are they allowed to confront the doctor? Because by the way, I never realized how hard that is for team members, even with associates and interim docs, to go up and have a really frank conversation of like, you know, like Carrie, you trained your team to keep them in the rails a little bit and help them by osmosis, you know, but I'm sure, Carrie, you've given your team license to lovingly pull doctors even aside and have conversations, right? So, yeah.
Including myself.
Yeah.
They put me in my position all the time, and I tell them that's how I get better.
Yeah. So that's a really, really great point, Ashley, that I didn't even think about, is like having those conversations with the team of boundaries of when do you need to be bothered, and it's important that you want to know, and maybe when it's not, and here's the resources to use before you get to me. That's a really great one as well.
Like a toolkit.
Yeah, it's like a flow chart. If this happens, then this. If this happens, then this. So that's actually really great. So yeah, I mean, I think that for me, the things that I really wanted to discuss that I wished I would have had, and our friend Amanda Wilson kind of said that too on our little thing of like, gosh, this is stuff I wish I would have had then. And Carrie, that's kind of, you know, like you said, like it's almost not, it's hard to remember. But the things that we wished we had, and I was thinking about it, is if people need action items right now, are thinking to themselves, I'm not there, but I will be, or I am right now, or what have you. It sounds to me like first figuring out your bare bum minimum and your personal expenses monthly. And Carrie, I love it. Think of what could be the worst case scenario. So instead of 3 months, maybe make it more like 4. Worst case scenario, if I need 4 months, what is this going to look like? You know, decide which route to go. Ellie, like you said, you know, what route do you want to take? Take the shortest amount of time and get nobody. Try to get an interim doc in and maybe take minimal amount of time, or think about, could we get to the point of getting an associate in and going more that route? and what would that look like, and what's a good fit as far as a new doc, a more experienced doc, kind of knowing that. Prepping the team well, action item wise, is really making sure, like Carrie said, they know, the culture really well. You spent time onboarding them. You've prepped them with a toolkit, Ash, like you said, of what to do and when to bother you. Figure out onboarding documents for a doctor if they're coming in, and trying to get some sense of point people in there, whether it's leaders or an office manager, depending on the size, have point people in place. If you can, system audit what you can, meaning figure out what systems are broken, and during that 7, 8, whatever months you may have, do an audit of back office, front office, end of day checklists, morning huddles, figuring out those systems that need to be maybe tightened up so that when you're gone, you can use those point people to have action items themselves of accountability. Did I hit all of our points of?
That's good.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that there's women listening, they could actually take something from this of what we all wish we would have done, we didn't do, worst case scenarios, best case scenarios, and Ashley getting to kind of be on the other side of it and see it happening to other people. Is there anything else that you guys, being in your shoes, want to add to the doctors who might be listening to this, these women who either have young associate docs or themselves?
Or I would even ask too, like, we have gentlemen, I'm sure, who are probably listening to this. We actually have more gentlemen who listen to these lady leaders webinars than you guys might think. What would you tell these gentlemen owner doctors who have female associates going on maternity leave? Like, what is it that you wish that they would know?
That's interesting, because when I was having my kids are 18 months apart. And I remember telling the owner doctor the first time I was pregnant, and he was like, "Oh, okay, great." Kind of expected it. Had the baby, came back. And just so you know, I went into this practice and took it from a $500,000 to over $1 million producing practice as an associate. And so I knew what I was doing for that practice. And so it was we were in a win-win situation. So he was like, "Oh, congratulations," and had a really good response. "Whatever you need, whatever you want." Went on maternity leave, everything was good, came back. And I did not tell him I was pregnant with my second kid until I think I was 15 weeks pregnant. And I was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm having another one," because I was like, I felt so bad. It happened so fast. And his reaction to me was, "Oh my goodness, congratulations. That's so exciting for you." Mm-hmm. And isn't it funny that 11, 12 years later, it still resonates with me, his reaction. And then the reaction every time I would call, whenever I call him, I'd be like, I'm supposed to come back to work in a week. And guess what? I've got to take a couple more months off. So the point I'm trying to make is compassion. And just being compassionate, that it's really, it's a difficult time in women's lives to be a professional working woman and try to get through this. But then on top of it, just, well, we know this with our employees, right? They come to you and they say you're pregnant, and you're like, "Oh, shit," in the background. Like,
"Congratulations.
Yeah, look at this, it's great." So, right?
So true. Well, and the thing I would say, I have one right now, like I told you, like she is ready to have the baby.
Yeah.
And you do too?
Not an associate. Yeah,
okay.
Not an associate, but yeah.
So, and she's amazing. And so the thing that I would say that, like, us watching her, like, this is probably too much, like, they're really, hormones are real. Yeah. And, have compassion, because she is a stellar doc. And I meet with my doctors weekly, and she said to me, she was like, "I feel like you guys are seeing me at the worst time ever. And like, I want to control it. I can't. Like, one moment I'm crying, the next moment I'm angry." And I was like, oh, I understand, because I did it. I was like, I really get it. I do think that that's a concept for men that is genuinely a little tough. Like, how can you truly be crying one minute and upset the next, and things that didn't set you off really set you off all of a sudden? I'm looking at this sweet young lady going, yeah, I get it. Like, I'm with you, Carrie. Like, there has to be a level of compassion that it's inexplainable a lot of times to male docs that maybe just don't have any concept of like how true hormones can really be. So
Good note.
Yeah.
Good note. My
Yeah.
poor husband deals. I'm not even pregnant, and he deals with that. So you got.
it is.
Or be
Yeah,
with him
yeah,
when we do have kids.
Yeah. Exactly. That was a really great question. Yeah. I think having compassion. The other thing too is I think you can also help them prep. Now, this doctor was really smart that she literally set her own weekly goals of trying to hit production without starting big cases. So she was really smart about planning herself about, I'm going to finish up all my crown seeds so that other doctors don't have to try to fit that in if all possible. So really trying to be thoughtful in helping them get to the goals they need, but being thoughtful if you have other doctors or people who will have to take upon them that load, but doing it with a sense of compassion, I think, is important too. Yeah, great question, Ashley. Yeah. So yeah, anything else that would be helpful? All right, great. Well, hopefully we gave some good action items and a few helpful hints for the male docs as well. Thank you guys for taking your time to do this and bringing just such good perspectives that I don't know if just one of us would have come up with. So that was.
Yeah, I think this was really great. Thank all you ladies. Summer, thank you for hosting as usual. And this is great information. I think if you're a female doc or not, like it's good just to understand. And the compassion thing, I think, is a great point to end on.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, guys, have a great day. Thank you again.
Thank you, ladies.
Hey, Ash, do people need to do anything for CE or?
Yes, they do. The three of you who are still here, thanks for sticking with us. Actually, an email will be sent out to everyone who attended to get your link for CE credit. So again, thanks for attending, and thank you, ladies, for being a part of it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.